What's up, everybody? Just want to take a quick second and let people know that I am self-supported. I now put all of my episodes on Substack for paid subscribers. I put them up early, and then 24 hours later, I release them to the public on all my platforms. I also have Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, Buy Me a Coffee, Zelle, a P.O. Box, and I don't think, Locals, Patreon. And all of the links are in the show notes of every single episode I put out. So look forward to continuing to provide great conversations. And thank you all for your continued support. Craig, Gary, thanks so much for coming back. You guys were the first ones I thought of with everything that happened last week, and I've been sharing my theory with people, and some have engaged me, and most haven't. So maybe what I'm thinking is just totally off, and because it feels like people are glossing right over it. And so, in relation to what happened to Charlie Kirk last week, which unbelievable now, it's over a week ago, and more things are coming out, but yet it's also getting more chaotic of the stories and what to believe and what not to believe, and so I don't know. I mean, was he taken out? And I mean, I just can't believe this. To me, looked like it was professionally done. I'm not a assassination specialist by any stretch, but I can't imagine this was. You had to have planning and preparation to do something like this. And now the rifle, I think now this morning I saw Emerald Robinson reporting it was a different rifle than what was originally reported. You see the video of him running off on the roof, but he didn't have a rifle in his hands. I still have a hard time believing that somebody would inscript bullets and put them in the woods. That doesn't make any sense to me. Now we're getting into like James Bond, Jason Bourne, and Jack Ryan movies with some of this. And I wondered if the direction he was going with Turning Point, he was moving away from certain men in black, and they were seeing the where he could have gone politically, the career he potentially had, and maybe somebody decided to take him out with that. Now I don't know. I could be wrong. Maybe it was just this lone gunman with his trans boyfriend and whatnot. But I was using the analogy of Malcolm X and how he became more powerful than the nation, and the nation decided to remove him. Who wants to start with their thoughts on that?
Greg, why don't I jump in? Because I'm going to take it further out there than you're going to take it out there, and you'll bring me back in to like you always do. That's how we operate.
Gary, let me before you respond, tell me if you agree or disagree to start, and then go ahead.
Well, Gary, since you're going to take it further, let me go first. Then you can add to it.
All right.
That'd be better than me coming in with a short version after you've given a long version.
Okay, you're right, as usual.
Well, Mike, I think it's obvious, and I think Gary does too. It was a professional hit. The shot was 100. Well, first of all, I don't know any evidence that the person they've arrested is actually the shooter. In fact, I would, if I had to bet, I'd probably bet that the person they arrested is not the shooter. And it was a professional shot if it came from where they said it's 137 yards, one shot. This is not a kook. This is somebody that can handle a rifle. So who's behind it? I have two candidates. I don't know which or either. But one certain possibility is that it was the ruling establishment that took him out for the reason you gave. He was a rising leader. He had the youth. So he had the rising generation. He's young. He could easily have been a president and would have had really more support than Trump has. So he was definitely a threat to the ruling establishment. And so they had every incentive to take him out. And we know they take out leaders. They took out Martin Luther King. He was a rising leader of the blacks. He was not violent, not preaching violence. He was conciliatory, and not just, between blacks and whites, but between the United States and the rest of the world. He was seen as a threat because he was a leader they didn't have control over. So it took him out. They took out President Kennedy for doing the same thing. He was taking foreign policy out of their hands. He had it concentrated in his hands. He was dealing directly with the General Secretary of the Communist Party. This is unheard of. Frightening, actually, to them. So, yes, it's entirely possible the ruling elite took him out. Also, it's entirely possible that Netanyahu did it, that this was a Mossad operation. Why? Because Charlie Kirk began life completely, I would say, an Israeli shill.
This episode is brought to you by McIlvaney Financial Group. Their advisors bring a depth of knowledge and experience that allow them to serve their clientele with care, ensuring their financial needs are met now and in the future. Personally, I'm not saying cash is worthless, but you can see what's happening. It's worth less every year. Gold is the opposite. Click on the promo link in the show notes or go to www.mcilvaney.com/coffeeandamike.
Like almost every American conservative, he's brought up that the Israelis are our allies, our friends. It has roots in the Cold War, where there's a huge focus on the Middle East because the United States was trying to combat Soviet influence in the Middle East and wanted to be sure the United States controlled the oil flows. So, and plus we have this fiction of the Judo-Christian ethic. There's no such ethic. It's nonsense. The God in the Old Testament is angry and vengeful, and the one in the New Testament is loving and forgiving. So there's no such thing as a Judeo-Christian ethic. But all of this served for however long to keep the conservatives unthinking about Israel. They just, that's part of America. That's us. And so what was Kirk doing? He was starting to realize things about Israel and raise questions for the first time. And this was affecting the youth, the future base for Israel's control on America was in danger of departing them. So there was a very strong incentive for Netanyahu to have him assassinated. These are the two strongest incentives that I know of. I don't know if either is responsible, but those are the most obvious candidates. They're the ones who had a real motive. And to say some transgender had a motive, I don't know why. Why did he have a motive? So that's my take on it, Gary. You go ahead and tell us more.
Take us out to deeper water, Gary.
And by the way, Craig, that was well said. I agree with everything. I'm going to go to a little different angle. It's ballistics. It's the trajectory of the bullet. The trajectory of the bullet, when you look at it, did not come from a rooftop 120 yards away. In fact, there's a video of a man standing at the right at the front of the stage. He's leaning on the railing, and he moves his hand up, and you can see between his fingers in the video what looks like the barrel of a very small weapon, a specially designed weapon that fits in the palm of your hand. And as Charlie Kirk is hit, he's flexing his hand. And that position matches the line of fire, the trajectory of the bullet and how it hit Charlie Kirk perfectly. And there's no way of getting around that. And of course, the FBI is not talking about that. In fact, they were cleaning the stage almost immediately after Charlie was hit, which is highly suspicious.
Yeah.
Then you have the video of Robinson up on the roof where he's jumping off the roof and obviously doesn't have a rifle in his hand. So they say that he took it apart, and it's not easy to take one of these rifles apart. And the barrel typically is 42 inches long, and that's supposed to be in the pants leg of his tight jeans. When he jumps off the building, you see absorb the fall with his leg bending. Obviously, there's no barrel in his pants leg. And then he goes to the woods and reassembles the rifle when he's trying to escape, wraps it in a towel that has his DNA on it, and then the change of clothes. Somewhere he changes his clothes again to the clothes that he was filmed entering the event under this extreme duress situation. And then we see the email or the text rather to his roommate. And if you read it, it is so unreal. It's preposterous that he's admitting to the crime and all this kind of stuff. It's just nonsensical. He wouldn't be writing that text in that way under those circumstances. It's almost it's consistent with so many of the other events that we've had to endure. Airplanes slashed through, aluminum airplane wings slashed through steel and concrete buildings and make holes in the Pentagon that are smaller than the fuselage of a 757. It's so preposterous that that it almost makes fun of us. That we're forced to believe these narratives. Thomas Crooks in shooting Trump. There's so much nonsense around that. He had something like 40 training sessions paid by Homeland Security at the local shooting range prior to the event. He had the encryption devices on his phone. He was communicating with some foreign entities, and there's just so many nonsensical things. It's almost, if you're looking at things with a critical mind. And now let's go back to
Gary, it's just like 9/11 when they claimed they found Muhammad Atta's passport on top of the rubble of, what would that have been? 206 stories of rubble. Unmarked, not scorched, not burnt, nothing. They couldn't find anything, but they found his passport. It's just that preposterous, the stuff they tell us. You're right about that. And Gary, I'd also point out what I remember about that Pennsylvania shooting of Trump. There was another ballistics problem because the people hit up in the stand were hit from a bullet coming up from below, because the shooter allegedly was shooting down at Trump. If he was off by 20, 30 feet, then he wasn't much of a shooter. So the whole ballistics thing is repeating. It's just the people up there, the one who was killed was way up high, and the bullet had to come up at him. So I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to add 2 points in support of your presentation. I think that's very supportive of what you're saying. And they always rely on us to believe the most absurd things. And it does show they have no respect for our intelligence. Or they know they are alerting us and it will make us feel impotent because we can't do anything about it. We know we're being fed
Yeah.
a lie, but what can we do about it?
That's a great point. They add humiliation to the narrative as a factor. Well, I'm reading James Webb, who's an investigative reporter. He's really on top of this bullet trajectory. He also has done a pretty pretty thorough background check of uh, Tyler's history. ROTC, he was taken through the ROTC program to various camps. His uncle, very high up in the security services, so he was in a position to be groomed, prepared to be a patsy in this type of event. When you look at the history there, and the media wants us to be talking about his transgendered roommate uh, and something funny on that. If you read the New York Times version of the roommate, they just shared an apartment. There's really not much about the transgender issue when obviously they were lovers, but they want us talking about those things, not bullet trajectories, not the history that Tyler had of being indoctrinated by the security agencies. And then let's go to Craig's suggestion. I'm pretty certain this is a Mossad CIA event, and as Craig was saying, Charlie was a Christian Zionist for a long time. And the definition of that is those Christians who believe that if you bless Israel, you'll be blessed. If you curse Israel, you'll be cursed. And I understand that really well because I used to be a Christian Zionist. What woke me up was reading the Talmud in Talmudic Judaism. The Talmudic Jews are taught that Gentiles are subhuman. And you can see that in the Gaza situation right now. They refer to them as animals and vermin and all kinds of things, and they're killing an average of 100 Palestinian children every day. And so Charlie began to wake up. And remember, he was funded initially by different Zionist organizations. They really made him who he was. And he, of course, was towing the line, and I believe sincerely, as a Christian Zionist. But Gaza woke him up. Where is Jesus in the killing of women and children? The media today still says 65,000 Palestinians were killed. Well, that was the number a year and a half ago. But they're still reporting it. The number today is in the hundreds of thousands. And we see the IDF sniping children that are in line for food. We see them blowing up apartment buildings, last few days. We know that 70% of the people that are killed are women and children. And, they're starving them. They're not allowing food to come in. And when they do, they set up a sniper operation, and they say that there's food riots, so they start shooting the women and children in line. It's a horrible situation. And I tell you, it's a wake-up call for Christian Zionists, because that is a false doctrine that unfortunately has probably 80% of Christians in America captured. But if you step back and use your brain, use your own reasoning, killing all these Palestinians is evil. Most of the rest of the world has recognized that. And Netanyahu is under indictment for a variety of things. And this is an interesting thing that I noticed. The day after Charlie Kirk was murdered, Netanyahu came out and did this big production about Charlie being a son of Israel and pro Zionist and so forth, and a big deal about it. And to me, that was a show. it was coming out and making it look like, of course, the Israelis had nothing to do with this because he was one of us, loved him. Well, in the few months before this event, Charlie Kirk came out hard against Netanyahu and how he was controlling the U.S. government. We were no longer a sovereign nation. The Gaza genocide that's going on. And if anything, Charlie had seen the light and was now talking about it. They were already pulling his funding and his support from the Zionist organizations. So for Netanyahu to disingenuously come out and claim Charlie was one of them and so forth, and such an overtly level was a cue to me that the Mossad certainly were involved in this. And the Mossad has infiltrated the CIA to such a high level. You go back to Kennedy, and Craig and I have debated this a lot. He's less inclined to believe the Mossad was involved, but they had infiltrated the CIA. And of course, Robert Kennedy Jr. Is very open about the CIA killing his uncle, right? And we know that certainly the CIA was involved. James Jesus Angleton was the handler for Lee Harvey Oswald for several years prior to the event. And so is the Mossad were they involved in 9/11? You had the dancing Israelis claiming that they came there to film the event. Well, how'd they know the event was going to happen, right? Yeah, we've got a real Zionist problem in this country. And I'm friends with Thomas Massey, and Thomas was on Tucker, came out and said that every congressperson had a Jewish babysitter assigned to them. And of course, he and Tucker have been blasted hard for that, but that's the truth. AIPAC assigns someone to every congressperson to make sure they vote the way they're told to, and if they don't, they get primaried with AIPAC money. And again, we go back to Thomas Massey, who's getting majorly primaried right now with AIPAC money because he's told the truth about the influence that we have. And by the way, most Jewish people have nothing to do with this. If anything, they're victims of all this Talmudic pursuit of power. But the ones that are involved with promoting pornography in America, they're all Jewish. The ones that promote transgenderism and all of the open border, you name it. If there's a problem in this country, and the money often comes from BlackRock and Vanguard, which have Jewish CEOs, or Borla, the head of Pfizer, who lied about the safety and effectiveness of this bioweapon they call the V word. I don't want to get you knocked off here. And we have to, I'm America first, period. If it's not good for America, I'm not going to participate. And so Israel is not an ally of America. They're a controlling, awful influence that wants our kids and our treasure to help them become the dominant player in the Middle East, what they call Greater Israel.
Let me ask you guys, because this is the other theory that not theory, but adding on to what I said earlier, because you look at Turning Point USA, and I live in Phoenix. We're a Turning Point. I mean, I used to see Charlie at the grocery store. Turning Point's based in Phoenix, and then Turning Point Action, which that was the ground game that I don't know if it was introduced last year, but that organization did a phenomenal job of getting boots on the ground to get young people registered to vote. And he delivered the Republican, the GOP, to Trump, which was, I think, the first time ever, the success at with the campaign. And so this is why, with Turning Point and the power, because he wasn't just a content creator. It was a political organization. So, what happens now with that organization? And did that have something to do with it? To Craig's point, whether it could be Israel, the establishment, could it be a combination of both? And would the establishment be Democrats and Republicans that benefit from him being gone? And in my opinion, Turning Point, I'm getting slack for this, but I think Turning Point is irrelevant now. How can they go on in the manner in which they did before?
Let me give a short answer, and then Craig can elaborate on it. I saw 4 or 5 days ago that Turning Point had about 1,200 outlets across the country. They had 40,000 requests to start Turning Point outlets across the country. So the organization is positioned to flourish. But the real question is, who are they going to benefit, right? And if they go back to benefiting the inordinate Jewish influence over our political system, then it's going to be a terrible tragedy. On the other hand, if they stand up for truth and for America first, and most of all for Jesus, they were a wonderful organization in the fact that they tried to alleviate the hostility out there through dialogue. And of course, Charlie was killed for that. So I think and then you have the problem. The Democrats certainly are not going to be happy about any influence they have, but neither are the establishment Republicans. Or those Republicans that are beholden to the Jewish influence, which unfortunately is almost all of them, right? So that's a really great question. Is this going to turn into something for truth and justice and the American way? Or is it just going to be a much larger vehicle for those people with that are not America first? Craig, what do you think?
And let me just throw one thing in Craig, before you respond. Because who's financing Turning Point? Who was doing it before, during, and going forward? Who's going to be providing the money for this organization? And that's where I agree with you, Gary, because I feel like whoever's financing that, and I'm sure there's an easy way to figure that out, who's doing it, they're going to steer it in a certain direction.
Well, the other problem is, are the people that are going to step into Charlie's place, are they going to be terrified of criticizing Israel? Are they going to be bought as Turning Point originally was by Jewish influence? Those are my thoughts on it.
Craig?
Okay. When an organization is created like Turning Point by a person like Charlie Kirk, when that person's removed, that organization is really badly hurt. There's no real replacement for him. He had some kind of way about him, some charisma. He could appeal to young people who hear every kind of anti-American, anti-white narrative from their teachers and public schools and universities. When you knock out the leader, and of course that's the policy Israel follows, as we've seen, and all the attacks, all the assassinations Israel does in foreign countries. They're always assassinating Iranians and people in Lebanon. They were tried the other day to assassinate some Houthis that were in one of the oil sheik towns. It's their program. So if you lose your leader, look at what's happened to Project Veritas that James O'Keefe founded. He's the guy that goes around the microphone, sticks it in front of people, and they confess about all the nefarious things they do. Well, he was so successful, somebody got to the foundation. They threw him out of his own foundation. You never hear anything about Project Veritas anymore. You don't hear anything. The same about Glenn Greenwald, a lefty, a homosexual, but a really good reporter. He respected truth. He, he lost all his what I call the whore media positions, and he created something, I think it was called The Intercept. Okay, again, he's too effective, so they throw him out of that. I haven't heard of The Intercept since. I haven't heard a word. You don't see any sign of it. So my view is that the real problem is there another Charlie Kirk? And how is he going to appear? Now, I think the point that Gary made about how Netanyahu rushed to claim Charlie Kirk, it's true for the reason Gary gave. It's also true because it was Netanyahu's effort to stop the turn away from Israel of that organization by putting the idea out there that Charlie Kirk was just solid with Israel. So that would have the effect on Charlie Kirk's followers, or Netanyahu would hope it would have the effect of saying, oh yeah, well, Israel's okay, it's us. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't think that Kirk was ever bought by the Israelis. I think it's just natural for American conservatives to be in Israel's pocket. They've been in that pocket because of the Cold War, because of the Judeo-Christian ethic. It's just a customary place for them to be. And I think maybe Israel saw, they buy everything, or try to. They get in with money on any kind of development to be sure it doesn't in some way work against them. So I don't think they bought him with money. I think he was just with them, and they decided, like they do when they buy the newspapers and the movie producers and everything, and the university faculties and everything else. They just accumulate as much that can't turn against them or be reluctant to. As to funding, that's the real question. Who is there? Certainly none of the big philanthropic foundations. They're not going to fund it. Ford Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, Carnegie, Pew. No, of course not. Who's going to fund it?
Peter Thiel? Peter Thiel, maybe?
If you're a 701c3, you have to have public support. And you can't make it just on public support. You got to have some big money behind you. But I just don't think there's that much money that's going to be available, because it's not Charlie, whatever and the fate of it now is uncertain. And people will have to consider, well, when Trump's not there, who's going to be president? What if the Democrats get back in? And we've placed our bets on Turning Point. I don't know if you noticed all the papers that Senator Grassley released the other day. This is amazing. Somehow they got out of the FBI all kinds of documents showing the extent of the FBI's investigation of Trump. Well, it wasn't just an investigation of Trump. It was the entire Republican Party. They had the Republican National Committee, the Republican District Attorneys Association. So all of the previous DAs who were Republican, they were being investigated. they were after the whole party. They were going to destroy the whole party. Well, this has to scare people to death. The Democrats are far more determined and ruthless to have control than the wimpy Republicans. Republicans are essentially wimps. They're afraid to fight. The Democrats have an ideological drive now. They have to overturn this evil white society. That's why we have open borders. That's why they're so protective of criminals, especially black ones. It's why they're so protective of sexual perversion. In fact, they've legalized, the Democrats have legalized all sexual perversion so far except pedophiles. And they're working on that. So the kind of attack they have on the society is general and very strong. And what happens if they get back in? They're really going to double down after the Trump experience. So this is going to affect the willingness of anybody to do or say anything. And so, whoever got rid of Charlie Kirk got rid of a threat. And that has to tell us, and the 2 attempts on Trump's life. But the even greater threat was the 8 years of demonizing and false investigations, 4 false criminal indictments. I don't know how many false civil indictments. So the message is that the Democrats are sending is, you get in our way, we're going to get you. That's the message. What do the Republicans have that will make them stand up to that? They don't believe in anything much themselves. They don't have enough self-belief in the country and in the values to take the risk of defending them. And that's the situation that we're in. I wrote an article the other day explaining that neither party is capable of representing ethnic Americans. They can't do it, neither party. So that's the real danger. After Trump, the deluge.
Do you I never thought Charlie Kirk was a threat. I didn't realize it till after he was killed. Did you two ever think he was a viable threat to them?
It's obvious.
I mean, but before he was assassinated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I expected him to be assassinated, though I thought it would probably be political. There'd be a woman. Because that's what they could have killed him just as easy. Have a woman come up and claim that when she was a little girl, he raped her. And because that would appeal to Charlie Kirk's Christians. Oh, another one of those. We've been fooled again. They didn't have to kill him. Well, they wanted to get rid of Nixon. They couldn't get rid of Nixon with a gun like they did Kennedy because people were getting more and more suspicious about the narrative that Oswald did it. So they killed Nixon politically with Watergate. That whole thing is a hoax. And everybody believes today Nixon was off in Watergate. They don't even know what Watergate was. You ask them, well, what was it? Well, it's Nixon. He used curse words. He lied. Hell, all politicians lie. They can't survive if they don't. They don't lie for the pleasure of it. There's so many contending pressures on them. You can't satisfy all of them. You have to lie your way out of some of them.
The paperwork you talked about that was released last week, Turning Point was also one of the organizations that they were going after, which I think tells you the power.
That's right. Then we're after turning point two. Exactly.
Yeah. And they credit Charlie Kirk with getting Trump into office. That was his level of influence. So they recognized him as a threat to their power. Craig, you made an interesting point. They could have undermined him, like they did Kavanaugh with an old mythical story about rape and all that nonsense. They chose to kill him. So there's a message there, rather than when they kill somebody, especially at a high level like that, they really expose themselves. I think they determined that it's worth the risk. So why would they elevate it to that level? And I think the answer is there's a message there that they're willing to kill people that expose them. And they'll do that selectively. They can't do it on a regular basis, so people will wake up like they did after Kennedy. But this was a message, and people that are like Tucker. Tucker really has started to talk about these anti-American influence, and they're sending a message.
Tucker next.
What's that?
They're going to kill Tucker next.
That's where I'm going with this.
He's the next one to be killed, and I don't rule out another assassination attempt on Trump.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with that too. Yeah, and that's the message. Trump doesn't want to die. Tucker doesn't want to die. Thomas Massey, these heroic people that are willing to stand up and risk their reputation, their finances. Tucker was fired from Fox. That's one thing. But to risk your life, that's the message right now. If you speak out against the people in power,
that means me and you better shut up, and so it might.
That's why I'm just listening. That's why I'm just listening to you two.
Yeah. Michael, you sponsored this. You're in this with us, man.
Actually, Gary, I don't know whether getting killed is worse than being a young man and having to live a life with a ruined reputation.
Well, Kennedy.
If Charlie Kirk was asked, "Hey, would you rather be killed or your reputation ruined and you got to live with it for the next 70 years?" Well, I'd probably say kill me.
Well, Robert Kennedy Jr. A few days ago actually commented on this, and he said that, and this is going to be a terrible quote, that would you rather live? It is awful. It's not even a good paraphrase, but his point was, would you rather live a lie or die knowing you stood up for the truth? And Kennedy said just a few days ago, that is really the question right now for everybody. And the crazy thing is, there's so many more of us than there are of them that we ought to have courage. And, Michael, I think the next thing we talk about is what's going to happen from here. Are we going to have a great awakening in this country? Are those of us that are truth tellers going to start shouting down the criminality of the left, the deceit, the lies? A man can become a woman. Castrating a 10-year-old little boy is in his best interest. The bioweapon out there that they now know has killed far more people than it saved, and evidence is all coming out for that. Are we going to have the courage in mass to overwhelm the lies, much less protect ourselves from being killed? And I'll tell you, Craig and I have talked about this a lot. I have a weapon on me at all times.
Don't tell them that, Gary. Come
Well,
on, learn how to protect. You don't tell them that.
oh,
You just cut your chances down.
well, I usually open carry. Yeah, I made a deal with God. When they come after me, that it's not going to be an assassination. It's going to be a gunfight. That's
They won't. They'll shoot you in the back.
What what
well. Go ahead.
So what do you guys think though? They could have done this in relation to Charlie. They could have done it I mean by private, like him walking in and out of a store, or on his own somewhere, instead of doing it on this stage. Three
Yeah, he could have
thousand
had a
people
heart
there.
attack, right?
Right.
Yeah, you're right. That's another message. They did it in the most high visibility, public way possible for a reason, right, Craig?
Yeah, I think Gary's right. It's a way of generalizing the warning. Yeah, it generalizes it. If he gets killed in a fake robbery in a store or something like that, um, it's always unclear. Was he meant to be killed, or he just catch a bullet because this crap was going on, the robbery, or if he got hit with a truck or something, or is that on purpose or not? But this was purposeful, and I think Gary made all the points that it was professional. It wasn't. Um, you may remember there was somebody there who distracted the police, claiming that he had shot,
Mhm.
and he said he did it so the shooter could get away. And of course, they say, well, there's no evidence he was working with the shooter, but why would somebody do that? Why would he want?
And that same fellow, he's been arrested for possession of child pornography, but he just happened to be at 9/11 that day, and he just
Oh,
happened to
really?
be at another similar event. I can't remember which one. So he's an interesting fellow. And let me go back to this. This is an act of terror, the way they did it. They were
Yeah.
terrorizing people like Tucker uh, to shut them up. So, and I think that's more evidence that it was a professional hit, because they did it in such a public way. Uh, and because they could have done it in so many other ways. This was an act of terror by, I don't like the term deep state. They've redefined the definition to those people, those bureaucrats that have remained in power, after each election. That's not the original definition of deep state before Trump got in office. Were the men behind the curtain, and these are the elites that control the media, that have a globalist agenda, that want to diminish the U.S. because we're in the way of a global government. That's the real deep state. Uh, and they are satanic. They're murderers. They foment war. They profit off of misery, like the Pfizer criminality and so forth. That's the real deep state, and they're the ones that are controlling all this, because they want to do three things. They want to control us absolutely. They want a mass transference of wealth from us to them. And they want fewer of us. They call it a sustainable population. So that's their agenda. And if you think of things through that prism, it really makes sense out of a lot of things that otherwise your paradigm can't can't recognize. It's a globalist agenda by really evil people that have massive control over the message, over people in power, over the money supply, over borders. They've overrun Europe with North Africans that are raping the women and uh, 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 you know stabbing and killing people. They've outlawed certain knives in the UK now, because so many of the North Africaners were stabbing the Gentile uh, Brit, uh, Britons. And Craig writes a lot about that. I read your article today, Craig. The Camp of the Saints. That's his favorite book, by the way. Everybody needs to read Camp of the Saints. It explains a lot.
Does this also to you guys send a message about the First Amendment? This assassination is now to both to Craig your point, Gary too. Making people afraid to speak out. I mean, I'm hearing Megyn Kelly talk a lot about this. Candace Owens, Tucker, but going forward, they want to take away the First Amendment, and this was an opportunity to do that.
Well, you saw Pam Bondi talking about hate speech and criminalizing it yesterday. That's our side that's talking about limiting speech based on that. That's a terrible precedent that is emanating from this.
Yeah, I think our side is 50% infected with the same mental outlook that the other side's 100% infected with. And then, of course, that limits the ability to do anything. And Gary, you talk about we have the mass. No, we don't. The vast majority of people that we would think would be on our side they're insouciant, they're uninterested, they're not involved.
Yeah.
They don't pay attention, they don't even know. I don't think ever more than 20% of the population cares enough to know what's going on. They want to know if their football team's winning or the basketball team's winning or a golf game, or they don't know, they don't want to know. It's bothersome. They want to have fun or do entertainment or earn their keep. I really think no more than 10% really have a strong interest enough to be aware or to be suspicious that is this story right or is it a lie like the previous story? You see, if people were aware, they couldn't keep telling us lies, obvious lies. Oswald killed Kennedy, Sharon killed the other Kennedy. You see, that fella killed Martin Luther King. We now know from the civil suit the King family brought that fella didn't. And then we get to 9/11, the most preposterous story anybody could imagine. And they don't stop. The Gulf of Tonkin, Saddam Hussein's weapons of mass destruction, Assad's use of chemical weapons, the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Go try to tell an American conservative that Russia didn't invade Ukraine.
Yeah, you're right.
They'll look at you like you're a commie or an idiot or something. That's the real trouble. This is why I keep using the term insouciant American, dumb shit American. That's what they are. They don't know. They don't really even want to know. I remember when I came out of the administration, all the speaking bureaus sitting around giving speeches, and what I discovered was if it was any big group, like a trade association, they didn't want to hear anything. They wanted to be told 2 or 3 jokes and laugh and then go to the bar. And if you tried, I started off thinking they actually want to know what's happened, what the policy was, what we hope from. Not a bit of interest. They get mad. They get mad if you start talking to them like that. They wanted to hear some jokes and go to the bar. Now, the only people who wanted to know would be smaller groups of investors, for example. They wanted to know. Or top executives of big corporations. They would want to know. But the vast bulk of people didn't want to hear a word about anything. They just weren't interested.
That is I agree with you. And this is all a product of education system that's taken over many decades ago by people who already had that agenda in place. There are some good points. when we when we threw the British out of America in the Revolution, only 10% of Americans were on board with it, and yet we still accomplished it. And the younger generation right now uh, is getting serious about their faith. They're overflowing the churches now, particularly the more serious denominations. Um, uh, More so than the young women, by the way, which is interesting. The men are getting serious again, and they tended to vote Republican for the first time in a long time. So there is some hope there that we're going to bring this back. And an expression I use is that people are only teachable when they suffer sufficiently. So you got a lot of young Americans. The average first-time home buyer today is 39 years old. 1/3 of all 30-year-old young men still live with their parents. So we have a country right now where people can't afford to form families. They've gone into massive debt for an education that has no value in the marketplace. As I mentioned, they can't buy a home. This level of frustration may make a lot of Americans start thinking for a change, and there's going to be a lot of suffering. There already is. That's our hope, that those people in power lie to us enough, they destroy the economy enough, our freedoms, they steal elections and right in front of us.
Yeah, look, if they suffer, the question is, who controls the narrative that's explaining to them why? You can't assume that they're going to automatically see the truth because they're suffering. It just means they're going to listen, but you don't know who is going to be talking to them and who they're going to believe. I mean, it could just as well be Lenin telling them something.
That's true. Craig,
And I agree that it's the men
yeah.
Going into churches. You know why? Because the feminists took the women away from them. They got to be monks.
Craig, it's your job and mine and Michael's to be the messengers if they're finally listening.
Well, that's where my final point that I want to discuss with you guys, even if it's briefly, is to both of your points again, because they're looking for direction, and people right now are clamoring on the right. They're clamoring. They're loving the fact that Jimmy Kimmel got removed, Stephen Colbert, and here we come. And I'm not saying I like Jimmy Kimmel at all, but how's the government going to fix this? People I talk to personally are like, government. What's the solution from the government? The government.
Yeah.
Are you guys seeing parallels of 9/11 after 9/11 to what Charlie Kirk last week? Now, where people are like, yeah, Jimmy, yeah, get all the hate for Charlie Kirk off social media, get people fired from their jobs. Seeing any similarities?
The only thing I've seen is social media comment. There was a famous cartoonist who used to do cartoons in the newspapers when we had newspapers. I forget his name, but he did a video in which he's talking about all of this, and he concludes unless we're willing to use massive violence, we're lost and gone forever. We can't do anything. That if we don't have the ability to realize we face death threats and have to fight for our lives, it's all over for us. That's what he says. Well, that's a new development. That's a new development in public expression. And the other one I saw, the guy says, what's Trump sending National Guard to blue states for? What's the point of that? He has to send the Air Force.
Well, I sent that to you, Craig. You remember that?
Did you send that to me? Is that why? Yeah, I've been trying to find it because I was going to. But anyhow, I think that, and what we see in London with all these massive protests, they're starting to realize it's pointless. A peaceful protest is pointless. It has no effect whatsoever because the government couldn't care less what the people think. They think if they're demonstrating their opposition, the government will take account of it and adjust its policies to the people. Well, the government couldn't care less. And it's starting to dawn on them. So it may be sooner or later that these peaceful protests are totally pointless because the government doesn't care. If you're not prepared to hang them off the nearest lamppost, don't even bother to protest.
Yeah, I think
Protests will be efficient when Starmer is hanging off the lamppost outside number 10 Downing Street. Until that happens, the protests are a waste of time. And until they learn that, it's feeble. What's it achieve? Nothing. It just gets them denounced as right-wing racist. How has the British press responded to the protests? You know what the protests are about. Enough information has come out that the British government, both parties, for 30 years, has been suppressing all evidence of rape gangs that systematically rape little girls. They've suppressed all that. 30 years, they don't prosecute. They arrest the parents who complained. This is finally, it took 30 years for this to actually affect enough people to go protest. 30 years for this to go on. Well, just think about that. I mean, a 5-year-old girl raped, she's 30 years old before anybody goes to protest.
that's a good point.
Well, I just don't, I'm not in the least bit hopeful. The Camp of Saints isn't my favorite book, but it is a perfect prediction. I've been for 52 years since that book came out. I've been watching the thing unfold step by step, year by year. You can see it. You're watching it happen in reality. I've been doing that 52 years. And people don't want to read the book. I don't think they want to know because it's scary. And I might have to do something.
Craig may have just answered the question, Michael. England, the home of the Magna Carta, has just endured 30 years of this misery.
They still are.
Yeah. And just now they're they had 1 million people go to the street, which is great. But all they got was more threats from the people they've elected and so forth. I'm afraid that is a preview of what we're going to be enduring. One of the roots of the problem is that the left operates on identity. We operate on ideas and we have opinions. They're strong opinions often, but they're not who we are. The left identifies as these transgenders or gay community or minorities or whatever. And so when we get criticized, it doesn't raise us to violence because it's just our opinions. But when they get criticized, it's a direct threat to who they are. And so they're always going to have a tendency to be violent over their positions. We're going to tend to be opinionated, however strong it is. So we there's a basic principle there that's problematic for us in some ways. I don't want to react. I want to respond. They don't have the ability to respond. They only react, and that's where the violence comes in. And the people in power, they manipulate that identity politics, that violence to these levels. They use it to control these people. And you got to realize the people behind the curtain want America to diminish because we're in the way of globalism. So we didn't even mention this, but one of the great agendas that happened over the Charlie Kirk assassination was we might have mentioned it a minute ago, it was divide and conquer. They don't care which side we're on as long as we're on different sides of the opposing people. Because as long as we're fighting each other, biblically, a house divided cannot stand. They want us divided and fighting each other regardless of which side we're on. And that's a great accomplishment from the assassination they've done. And so that's part of their agenda too. They want us fighting. They want us disagreeing because that takes us out of the game.
I want to state Gary's point differently, and then I get to go. And y'all can continue as long as you want. You don't need me. You're having a good conversation. How I would state Gary's point is that the Democrats are an ideological party now. They didn't used to be, but the liberal left has turned them into an ideological party. And the agenda of an ideological party is not constrained by the accepted rules. They mean nothing to them. We know it doesn't because they stole the 2020 election. If you're willing to steal a presidential election and to frame up the winner so to make it easier to steal it, then you don't respect the rules of the system. So here's the problem. The Democrats have no respect for the rules. They want power, period. They'll do anything to get it. The Republicans, they're so protective of the rules. We have to obey by the rules. So they step aside and the Democrats come in. So we're back to the question, what happens when Trump's gone? I mean, and he's not really all that powerful of a force because he's in Israel's pocket. So this is the way I would state it. The Republicans, they respect the rules, try to defend the rules. The Democrats have no respect whatsoever for the rules. None. And so how do you compete with them? You're trying to play by the rules and they're trying to shoot you in the back. Well, that's the real situation. Now, I want to say one other thing, but Gary already knows. I don't believe this has anything to do with globalism. This is a product of how intellectual ideas developed. Most of the world ain't going to have anything to do with globalism. They're already shut off from the West, the BRICS. There's no way some men behind the curtain are going to control China and Russia and Iran and India. It's not going to happen. It's going to be the West that's destroyed, the Western world. It's the white ethnic European races that are being destroyed. Already, we can see the governments do not represent the people. And Starmer made it very clear. The other day he said these protesters aren't allowed to use the British flag because the British flag is the flag of the Tower of Babel, of diversity, of multiculturalism. It's not the flag of the ethnic British people. Well, there you have the Prime Minister of England telling the people the government doesn't represent them. They can't even use the flag. Protest. Well, I want to end with that because I've got to go. You guys continue, and
Craig, where can people? I will, Craig.
Where can
people find you, Craig? Real quick.
Well, just my website. It's just paulcraigroberts.org.
And the name of the book that you mentioned, just because I know people are going to ping me wanting the name of the book that you talked about in this.
Oh, you mean The Camp of the Saints?
Camp of the Saints.
This was written by a Frenchman, Jean Raspail, in 1973. I think an English language came out in 76 or 75 or 76. Um, it then disappeared. But Ron Unz has it on his website, the whole thing, so you can read it online. And I think a reader told me not long ago that somebody had finally brought it back out. I expected anyone who brought it out would have the publishing house burned down. But you can, if you try to find it online, they'll sell you a copy for several $100s or several $1,000s or something like that. But I think there is a publisher now, but if not, go to Ron Unz Review. He's somewhere on the page, which has got too much on it. He has a list of all the banned books that are there, so you can read the whole book online. So it'll let you see what's happened. I mean, most of it here has already happened. Like I said, I've been watching it for 52 years.
Yeah. Hey, Craig, let me close with something, and then we'll both go off at the same time. Michael, you had a guest on the other day, and I was looking for his name. He's the fellow that the investor guy down in South America.
Matt Smith. Matt Smith.
No,
Doug Casey.
Doug Casey. There you go. Yeah, Doug Casey wrote yesterday something that I thought is a good conclusion here. He said, before you go and try to slay giants, which is what we're talking about, right? He said, charity begins at home, and you need to get your own house in order. And he said, financially, you need to be in a place that's safe. You need to, and you know, my background is physiology. 75% of adult Americans are obese now. You know, we need to get our own homes in order. We should be physically fit, mentally fit, financially fit, before we go out and try to slay dragons. And so most of your audience right now, I think, needs to hear that, because it sounds kind of hopeless what we're talking about. Well, charity begins at home. Get your house in order, and then these dragons that are creating all these problems, you'll be less vulnerable to them. So those would be my closing words.
Gary, where can people find you?
Gary at GaryHeavin.com.
Guys, thank you so much for doing this. I look forward to our next conversation and continuing to follow both of your work.
Okay. Yeah, it's good. I enjoy it. Let's do it again.
I did too. Talk to you Sunday, Craig.
Mic drop.